Welcome to Shree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the executive producer and guest host. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. For everyone watching on replay, I just wanted to thank you for watching the show. We get sometimes twice as many as 3 times the audience watching after the fact as we do watching live. So please make sure to let us know where you're watching from, and let us and share this Facebook stream as well. Sree will be hosting today's show, but before we get going, I just wanted to give you a little bit of recap over the last several weeks. We've had some amazing guests. Just going to last week, we had Devin Parekh, a venture capitalist, also happens to be my cousin and Emily's godfather, if you know Emily. We've had Amy Vership and Seb Modak, who are, Amy Vership is the travel editor for the New York Times, and Seb Modak was the 52 Places traveler for 2019. We were discussing their annual list of 52 places to go. We had Miss Virginia Walden Ford, a great story, growing up in Little Rock, helping to integrate the schools there, and a big education advocate. Ron Thomas, who is an HR professional, regular watcher of the show, based in the Middle East, often traveling to Singapore and East Asia. So every week we do the show, the Sree Sunday New York Times Read Along, often with a guest, where we live stream to Facebook and LinkedIn using a great app called StreamYard. So if you're interested in live streaming and want to know more about StreamYard, please let me know. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in our host, Sree Srinivasan, and we'll get going with today's show. Take it away, Sree.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Delighted to have you all here. Thank you very much, Neil Parekh. Neil is our awesome executive producer and guest host, and we are live in New York City. We come from Virginia to New York in split second. Ron Thomas is watching from Dubai, next week in Mumbai. He did a terrific show with us. Jonathan's watching from the East Village, just south of Union Square, somewhere around there. We're on the Upper West Side, and there you see Midtown and downtown. All the way in the distance is the successor to the World Trade Center. And these are the super tall buildings that are now dominating the New York City skyline. And let's see, over here, you have the mighty Hudson River, and over there, New Jersey. It's absolutely gorgeous today, but it's about 32 degrees, so just about 0 degrees Celsius. So it is very nippy, but beautiful. Tell us where you're watching from. We have a terrific show for you today. And Laura says, good morning from Jersey City, on her way to New York Fashion Week. And sorry to miss you in New York this time, Laura. If you're free for a coffee, let me know. Sneh is watching from Kathmandu. Amazing. This is the power of this technology. We're live on Facebook and on LinkedIn so that we can reach more people. That's all thanks to the hard work of Neil Parekh, Steve Taylor, and Paula Kiger. It takes a village to put the show together. Paula's watching from Tallahassee, and Steve's watching and producing from Philadelphia. Let me turn this camera around so I can say hi to all. Hi, folks. Good morning. Thank you for being here with me. We are delighted to have you here. And please tell us where you're watching from. Please tag your friends or hit share on whichever platform you are. We want to get as many people to hear this and see this as possible. It's a chance to celebrate the news, newspapers, journalism, all the things that some people in the US and in other countries hate, but we celebrate. So thank you very much for watching. Debbie's watching from DC. All right, so we're going to go inside and start the New York Times read along and bring along our guest in just a minute. Let's just go in here. And here's the newspaper laid out. I'm just going to close the door. It's as I said, it's pretty cold, but it is beautiful today. Carla's watching from New Jersey. Point at the Lincoln Tunnel and you'll be looking at me. So the Lincoln Tunnel is over there in the distance, and that's where Carla is. And Carla is responsible for today's show because she connected us with our wonderful guest, Corey Cohen, and also introduced me to Corey a long time ago. 4 years ago, she took me, our dog Tara, and my wife Rupa for a training session with the dog hugger. So more on that in a minute. We'll talk with the front page. Here's the Unusual Times Magazine with IOU from Donald Trump. It says the inside story of Donald Trump and Deutsche Bank, his lender of last resort by David Enright, A Continent Remade, reflections on the legacy of independence in Africa. So this should be a fabulous story. Susan says, we celebrate you, Sree. Oh, thank you so much. Sports. It's also Oscar night, so we'll discuss a little bit of the Oscars when we get to the travel and leisure section. And just for fun, I wanted to show you a couple of things I picked up at the grocery store this morning here on the Upper West Side. We have a tradition where we go to the best bagels in New York, a place called Lenny's. I know there will be partisans of other places that will not like that description, but we love Lenny's. And so I also stopped by West Side Market, and I found my favorite flavor of Chobani, which is this one, Greek yogurt, honey, and cream. I'd like to say there are no calories, but there are a lot of calories, 160 per serving. But this is delicious. It's not available as widely, so anytime I see it, I get as many as I can. And then extra special, look at this, dahi, which is the Indian word for yogurt, and India-style grass-fed lassi or buttermilk is a hugely popular drink in India. And this is a strawberry flavor and 15 billion live probiotics. And it's a company called Deliciously, at India-style slow culture probiotic, perfect for digestive health. I have never seen this before, and it's kosher. So there's true multiculturalism there, and it's delicious.com on Facebook and Instagram. So, and here, shake vigorously before enjoying, and maybe that you can run off some of the calories if you do that. All right. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. We want to thank our sponsor, the Bombay Shirt Company, for supporting us. And we're always looking for folks to support us and be a sponsor of the show. We reach thousands of people each week on LinkedIn and on Facebook. We'll also be on YouTube shortly. So please do, if you know anyone who would like to sponsor us, everything you see here is a labor of love. So we would love to compensate Neil and Paula and Steve and others for putting in so much energy and time. This is our fourth year. We're finished 4 years. This is our 5th year that we're doing this. And it's so cool, the community we've built globally. All right, let's get started. I'll read a little bit of the front page, and then we'll bring in Corey so he can say hello. I know he's standing by. On the front page, the lead story, President's team aims to win back suburban voters, tailoring his message, odds target those turned off by Trump's policy and personality. And this is a Maggie Haberman, Annie Carney, and Jonathan Martin story. Bitter struggle for control of the Nile. Egypt sees Ethiopia's huge new dam as a threat to its livelihood or its lifeblood. Sudha's watching from Jamnagar, India, mother of our executive producer, Neil Parekh. China in crisis. Xi backs away from spotlight, limiting his exposure to political risks. How are you folks feeling about the coronavirus story right now? I have a Twitter thread going about the media aspects of the story. Frankly, this is the moment where Americans and the world have to trust what the American and other governments tell them about the health situation. And we just don't have any trust in the American government to be able to do that. And this is the moment where we need that. And the virus hasn't killed its first American citizen in China, and as the toll has surpassed the SARS epidemic as well. And please say hi to Pradnya Haldipur, who's watching from Silver Spring, Maryland, regular viewer. And folks, Please tag your friends. Please hit share right now. Painful theme and backstory of Met painting. So I have not read this yet, and I definitely want to read it. Some of you know I worked at the Met for 3 years, 3 glorious years. I loved every minute. I have a hashtag on Twitter, hashtag 3 Met years, and you can see some of the highlights of my time there. And shooting rampage shocks Thailand. A Thai soldier targeted a military base and nearby shopping mall and killed 20 people and injured 42. I don't think this is a photo of the guy. I'm pretty sure it's not a photo of the guy, but this is the aftermath. Wobbly after outcome in Iowa, Biden faces a perilous moment. This is him in New Hampshire. He's conceded that he didn't win he conceded that he didn't win in Iowa, and he conceded strangely before the primary on Tuesday. He's already conceded that he'll likely not win in New Hampshire. That's unusual. Before we bring in Corey, just one thought about the President's Week. It'd be fair to say that, as multiple folks have said, that President Trump had one of his best weeks, if not his best week ever, despite Mitt Romney's going against him and voting voting him guilty in the Senate trial. His acquittal and the debacle in Iowa makes a very strong week for President Trump. And we have also seen that John Meacham says he's now politically the most powerful president in history, which is kind of stunning to hear from such a great historian. But the point is, there's never been a political leader who was that powerful, who in America, especially within his party, and able to control everybody. If you were like me, let me just turn the camera here. This is all editorial. If you're like me and surprised that even retiring congressmen and senators are reluctant to criticize him, the reason, turns out, is because they are in fact more vulnerable on their way out than when they're in. The opposite of what you would think is normal, because they are worried that they won't be able to become lobbyists, won't be able to do the speaker circuit, will be in fact expelled from the party. So the Republican Party is now truly Donald Trump's party, his fiefdom. And what will happen next is going to be, will be fascinating to watch, and also a little scary as we see where this country goes. If he says, for example, out loud that he'd like to stay a third term, will a single senator who's Republican disagree, step up to him, say no? The Constitution that they claim to love? I don't think so. If a Republican congressman steps up and says, no, Mr. President, you can't be around for a third term, what would he do? A congressman would be expelled from the party. We have said multiple times that when we are watching the elections, 2020 is going to be the pivotal election of our lifetime. In many ways, 2016 was. But 2020, with everything happening in climate change and everything else, it's really important to see what happens. So anyway, let's get our guest in here. And Neil, do bring in Corey, the dog hugger and animal behaviorist.
Hi, Sree.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Good to see you again.
Yes, thank you for that awesome day in July 2016 when Carla brought us together with Tara in one of the training facilities near you. And it changed Tara's life because it taught me many useful tricks and tips, and changed my life because I was able to have a better relationship with Tara. So thank you for that. And we will share some of your secrets with the audience and get your thoughts on where things are in terms of how people are treating their animals. And we'll also take lots of questions. So if you have questions for an animal expert, folks, this is your chance. Please jump in and please connect with Corey. He's on Facebook and Instagram as The Path of Friendship. Pack
Yes.
of Friendship. Tell us that name. What does that mean?
Well, it's really represents my whole philosophy on how we should be with our dogs. It's it's doing things together, sort of a vertical relationship a horizontal relationship as opposed to a vertical one. By the way, 4 years, it was 2016. It seems like it was last year to me. I'm sorry. I just, when you first said that, I was taken aback a bit. I can't believe
I know exactly what you mean. I went
years.
back and looked as well. By the way, Diane's referring to my beard. Thank you for watching. This is Rupa was away in India, so I was able to grow this beard, but she has full veto power over whether I get to keep it or not. She and the kids. But thank you for Neil's now tagged her, so there's no way to hide it from her. She came back shocked to find me wearing this beard. But let's look behind you. You have right there with you a dog. Tell us about who's watching. Yeah.
Yes, he's enthusiastically enjoying the show right now. That's Bodhi, one of my dogs. I have three. I have Bodhi, I have Bhakti, and I have Cecil. You probably won't see Bhakti. She doesn't like when I speak into the computer. If I'm on speakerphone, she kind of walks away. And Cecil's probably napping on the couch downstairs with my wife, who's probably sharing part of her breakfast with him. But Bodhi hangs out with me mostly, so
that's awesome. And the dog you mentioned is Bhakti, which is
Bhakti.
An Indian name, Indian word, an Indian name for faith. I love that.
Yes, faith and devotion. Yes.
Yeah, and we want to make sure. I'm sure Neil's told you this, that we want everybody to share this video right now. Tag their friends who have dogs, cats, any kind of pets. This is the animal behaviorist, so he can help you with questions and comments. And also, I'm sure everybody in your family has shared this as well. And tell us where you're watching from. Tell us how your Sunday is going, folks, as you're watching. Let me start with a question just about the thing you just raised about dogs and electronics. We always presume that dogs like to watch television because they can see the moving images, but our dog has zero interest in television. When my wife tries to FaceTime in to her or with her when she's away, no response of any kind, not even to the voice. Is that unusual or is that common among dogs?
It depends on the dog. I'll give you a perfect example. Bodhi behind me, if there's a dog on television or a horse or any animal, he will run up and bark at the screen. Not even a real one. It could be a cartoon of a dog, and he will run up and bark at the screen. My other two dogs have zero interest at all. So I don't know if it's visual, the ability for them to see it, or I think it's just some of them just don't care. There's a
and so there are dogs, as you said, who do care and do understand and
yes.
do get it. So our dog doesn't even see herself in a reflection in a mirror at her height. So that's also possible. Is that right?
It is. I mean, I'm sure she sees it, but she probably maybe is a little smarter and realizes, it's me. Why am I getting excited?
But that was almost from day one. It's not like she had a lot of experience before she realized that. So there may be something in her depth perception, her perception of certain kinds of things. I don't know. So it was very disappointing because we certainly hoped that when we were traveling and stuff, we could kind of talk to her, but it just doesn't work.
She probably hears you though.
Okay. So Neil's scrolling through a story. We'll just go to the top of that. It says, does your pet really need a cat TV or dog playlist? We do like to leave the TV on when she's alone for, at night for an hour or so. We don't want to waste the television, but even that is optional.
It depends if it's on all the time normally, and when you leave, to keep things as normal as possible, yes, leaving it on. But those who say never have the television on, when they leave, if the dog is not happy being alone and then they put the TV on at that point, it can almost have the adverse effect, being sort of a trigger for, you're leaving because the TV's on. So it really has to do with being more consistent and getting as close to normalcy as possible.
Well, that's a terrific tip. Thank you very much. I've already learned a lot. Everyone, please tag your dog friends or cat friends And let me ask Corey, what is the difference between cats and dogs about these particular questions we just raised?
The difference, I don't know what the difference between cats and dogs as far as watching TV and getting sound. I think it's probably unique in both. I've had many cats over the years, and I think one or two were interested in television, but most of them could care less about it.
And tell us how you got into the animal business.
Oh my gosh. Well, when I was a kid, long before electricity was invented, I grew up around dogs. Both my folks were involved with dogs. I got my first trophy when I was 10 years old, and I've been involved ever since, just consistently. I went to school for psychology, but I leaned it all more toward working with people and their dogs. And I've done everything from working with the New York City Transit Police. I did sort of help certify a dog there, to search and rescue work. And to my specialty now is working mostly with rescue dogs, shelter dogs, and dogs that have PTSD or emotional trauma, to try to help them connect better with the people who are caring for them.
Well, thank you for doing that. Such an important service you provide. People hire you, right, to work
Yes.
with their dogs, and of all kinds of animals. Pratnya says her dog, Natasha Romanoff, likes to watch dogs on TV. So as you said, it depends dog to dog. The services you provide, it's in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. How do people find you? Tell us about that.
I'm in the Scranton, Pennsylvania area, and all the way east towards northern New Jersey and New York. And if you go on petfriendship.com, if you look up under the About, or A New Leash on Life, which is the name of my consulting service, you'll find more information there.
I love that. A New Leash of Life.
On life.
Let's see, John of Life. Yeah, New Leash of Life. I like that. Let's see, John Anatolian says, please discuss pack mentality and the theory of a dominant or alpha dog.
Yes, this gets an awful lot of, there's a lot of confusion involved in this. The alpha dog theory is when it's really from wolf pack theory, and you have a wolf who is sort of the dominant, usually female or male, and they sort of are kind of run the pack. It's sort of hierarchy. One of the problems that happens is when we try to convert that to a human-dog relationship, what happens is I think it drives an actual wedge in between the two of us. Bodhi's having a dream here. See, even Bodhi doesn't like the idea of dominance. All right, Bodhi, wake up.
Sorry, we couldn't hear. Was he doing something? Was he saying?
He was snorting. He was having a dream.
Oh, okay.
So he was trying to snort.
Okay.
The relationship that humans and dogs have together was never where one was, especially in the beginning, where we sort of grabbed these wolf puppies from the wild and forced them, to obey our will. We were sort of two different cultures that kind of grew together. In fact, some of the theories that have come out that are gaining in support are the idea of mutual domestication, where we learned as much from wolves as they learned from us. So as human beings emerged from the forest onto the plains, we would watch and take cues from the wolf packs and how to hunt in those situations, cooperative hunting. So we kind of learned a lot from them. In a lot of ways, we're more canine-like than we are even primate-like in our cultures and in our dealing. So it's not this hierarchical type of relationship. It's more of a companion, mutual type of relationship. And some of the issues that happen when we care for a dog in our house, if we try to say, well, I'm the boss, do as I say, I'm going to bend you to my will, we will get obedience, but we're missing out on something that I think that makes us human who we are. And that is that connection, that one-on-one connection that we can have with dogs.
What is your number one tip for going from, your instinct might be to be like, I'm going to dominate you, to, as you just described, in that kind of different path? What is your number one tip for that?
Take a step back from yourself. Look at the bigger picture. Give your dog some trust their judgment on certain things. It's very important to trust our dog's judgment. You know, we fit together really well. Human beings and dogs are a great fit for a couple of reasons. One is that our intellectual ability, our brains are set up to really be able to have enhanced powers of prediction and memory. So we can see the bigger picture. We can see further down the road, so to speak. You know, we know if I do this and this and this, we can see, well, that will happen, which will equal this. So that's our strong point. Whereas a dog's strong point is what's happening right beneath their feet at this moment. So it's sort of two halves of the same coin. In fact, there was a Professor Groves he was, I think, a bioanthropologist out of, I think, Australia. And what he found out is that our brains and our dog's brains actually went through changes to complement each other. So the part of our brain that dealt with these sort of detailed, present moment sensory experiences actually decreased a little bit because we had dogs do it for us. And a part of the dog's brain that dealt with more of the abstract, bigger picture thought decreased a little bit because we did it for them. So we really fit together well. So if we're going to be in charge and sort of dominant, we're going to miss out on that kind of cooperative partnership rather than and miss out on the benefits of that.
Mark says, most of my cat friends think that cats actually have humans as their pets. And I often think that my wife is the service animal of our dog.
Absolutely. Well, we help each other. We have to help each other out. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't me who said it, was some comedian said that who's in charge if we're following dogs around with a plastic bag when we walk them.
Right. John says he was not actually talking about the human dog pack relationship, but the dog on dog pack relationship. So that was interesting. So let's go to this angle.
The dog on dog pack relationship, there is dominance, but dominance is a technique. It is not a sort of a goal. So there are dogs who are submissive who actually can control a dominant dog. So, for example, the normal submissive, what's known as rolling over on their belly, showing their belly, is a submissive type of act. And what that says to a dominant dog or an assertive dog is say, don't harm me, I'm not a threat to you. But that is actually a way of controlling the dominant dog. It gets the results, a manipulative technique. So there's no real clear-cut black and white. The other thing, too, is that with domestic dogs, dominance isn't always the same in each situation. It's more like situational dominance. So, for example, I've had dogs that are, when they're eating, none of the other dogs can come over to them. But it was very different when it came to, say, who went out the door first. One dog could be more dominant in a situation of being fed. Another dog is more dominant in a situation of going outside. So it's not so black and white with them.
Okay. Folks, please keep your questions coming, and please tag your friends. Please hit share on LinkedIn or on Facebook so that people can benefit from Corey's presence with us. And we're just so grateful that Corey would take the time to spend with us. Let's talk a little bit about the news. Let's go through the news. Tell us about your news habits, Corey. Are you a TV person, an internet person, all of the above? How do you get your news?
Probably mostly internet.
Okay.
I go through a lot of various sites when I have the time. Sometimes the radio, I'll flip around the channels when I'm driving, since I'm in the car an awful lot.
Right. Let's see. On this day in history, this is one of my favorite features. Beatles prepare for their debut. February 9th, 1964 was Sunday, the day the Beatles would play Ed Sullivan Show. And the Time Center reported to take in the scene. There was a gaggle of giggling girls outside the theater where the show was filmed, and several hundred more at the Plaza Hotel where they were staying. Not everyone was enthusiastic. The only thing that's different is their hair, as far as I can see. The show's goateed musical director, Ray Block, told the Times, "I give them a year." Tell me about you and the Beatles. You a fan?
Yeah, I am absolutely a fan. I was a guitar player for many years, and I love doing some of the Beatles things. Yeah.
Yeah. What have you seen that movie Yesterday, which is the kind of movie from last year? What would the world be like without the Beatles?
I haven't seen the movie, but that's a great question. What would the world be like?
and you can get a sense of it in this movie. And I loved it. I was a little wary of it, but I absolutely loved it, and I recommend everyone see it. It's really, really good. Okay, here to help. Switching to a better email service, migrating over. So suggestions on how to move from one service to another. What is your digital setup for all your social and everything that you do? Do you run it yourself? Do you outsource it? Do you family member? How does it work?
Mine is rather simple. It's just me.
Okay.
So there's nothing fancy on it. And I'm learning as I'm going, making many, many mistakes, but that's wonderful because that's how I learn more. But I'm getting there.
I think we're all learning and all making mistakes together. There's elections in Ireland. Sinn Féin surges in Irish elections. Exit polls predict. And here's an ad in honor of the Oscars. Several winners of Oscars. There's James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, Catherine Bigelow, and Alejandro Iñárritu, all in one photograph. That's pretty amazing. Are you a movie guy? What's the last movie? Have you seen any of the Oscar films? I
haven't seen any of the most recent films, no, but I do love movies. I just haven't had the time to watch as many in the past couple of years as I would have liked to. But I do. I love the stories and so the emotions that a lot of the movies give out. And the special effects. I'm not a big special effects guy.
Right.
I'm more of a story person.
Diana says, I'm a fan of Beatles and of Beatles. I love the movie Yesterday. Thanks. Okay, we got some questions coming in, folks. Love hearing about the psychology of dogs. What do you think about the trend of prescribing psychotropic medications to anxious or depressed dogs? Good Lord.
This is a great question, and it's something that I work with a lot because I do work with a lot of veterinarians with this. I think they can be sort of helpful in addition, but the main work really has to be with sort of the relational aspect of a dog. When a dog has gone through, whether it's be emotional trauma, whether it's been abused or neglected or abandoned or gone from home to home, or have other sort of anxiety-related issues, the primary thing they have to do is they have to feel safe. So it's not so much of using chemicals to sort of reduce the anxiety in them. It's making changes to their brain, making changes to their social connection with the person that's caring for them. That's most important. So that's the number one thing. Using some of these tools, some of these the chemicals to aid that and support that is fine, as long as they're just like scaffolding that eventually can fall away once the genuine connection is there and the dog feels safe. And for example, I'll give you the guy behind me, Bodhi. When I first got him, he was a mess. He had gone through a couple of different owners. Nobody wanted him. He was, in fact, the first time I met him, he wanted nothing to do with me. And when I went to pet him, he actually defecated on himself. He was that afraid. And that was 3 years ago. And now he's fine. And it wasn't specific techniques. I want to say anybody could have done what I did. It's nothing special. It's about respecting his space, giving him, supporting him, and giving him what I think is the most important thing that we need to do with our dogs is give them unconditional love and acceptance. That makes them feel safer and more connected. And it works on the attachment of the dog, which is a really important part of having a dog, is making them feel accepted and validated as well.
Thank you so much. Do you think dogs need those thunder vests and things that people now put on them when they're anxious?
Well, if you're not going to be around, and let's say with fireworks or with thunderstorms, they're not harmful unless they don't like it. No, the problem is that some of these things sort of promote it's a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, and that's obviously not the case. But for the most part, they're not harmful. But if you are there touching and being with your dog is what they're supposed to simulate, and it's much better to have a live person that they trust and feel comfortable with doing that to make them feel comfortable. But before that happens, you have to have a level of rapport with your dog, and they must feel safe and valued by you first before that can work. these sort of external things are good as supports, but they're not going to make a huge difference in the long run.
I agree. Just reading the story about immigrants and refugees in the New York Times just makes me think of all the animals that people have as pets, and when they go as, on these running, when they're running away from their homes, what happens to all those pets? I imagine there's some rescue efforts in some of these countries where there are economic refugees and war refugees.
There are people from our country that selflessly go out and help as well, and they spend their own money and invest their own time to go and try to help them, and that's it's a wonderful thing that they're doing, and it's thank goodness that they're doing that, because it really does make a difference.
Thank you, Corey. Just before we go back to the dogs, I'm a big fan of the show Homeland. It kind of disappeared. I don't know what happened. It's taken them 2 or 3 years to have a new season, but the final season's here. If there are any Homeland fans, I'd love to chat about Homeland once I start watching this, and maybe we can get together for the final episode. So anyone who's a Homeland fan, let me know, message me. All right. Afghan police fight bombers, crooks. That's another story. Shootout kills U.S. soldiers and Afghans. There's a story more about the virus going on here. There are still furriers, but it looks like Bloomingdale's is getting out of the fur business. You've seen the evolution of the fur business. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, it's exploitation of animals. I'm not a fan of fur whatsoever. I think there's plenty of things that can keep us as warm, if not warmer, than the skin of some animal. So I'm not a big fan of fur.
But just for people who aren't old enough to remember, it was absolutely normal to have a fur, to aspire to a fur. There was just like smoking. There was no any kind of stigma attached to it for decades, right? Maybe centuries. I don't know.
Yeah, but we, just like anything, we learn and we evolve and we grow. And now that we have more information and we're more aware, then we should continue to grow with it. But yeah, I remember my mom had fur. She had one of those things that was, I guess, fox heads or something on there. We had a bear rug growing up, but back then, way back then, that was the norm. That was accepted, and there was no question about what that really meant in terms of what was really happening there. But we evolve and we grow as we should.
Here's a story that says, this is part of in Chinese traditional medicine using buffalo horn, and we know that there's all kinds of animal products being used, and demand for things that allegedly help human health endangers animals all over the world, right? Not just human health, but also human vanity and ivory, all of those things as well.
It's exploitation. And again, it stems from a sort of anthropocentric view that we own the world and that we can use it in whichever way we choose to do it, as long as it makes us happy for the moment. But we're not using our big picture kind of idea that, down the road, that's going to end up hurting us too. But even in the short term, it still is exploitation, and it's what's done a lot with dogs, especially like with Westminster coming up. It's the objectification of animals, seeing them more as objects and less important than we are, and therefore we feel entitled to use them for our own benefit. I have a bit of an issue with that.
So just to understand, your opinion of the dog shows or what?
I'm not really a fan of dog shows or breeds. I think that the idea of genetically manufacturing breeds is pointless at this right now. We don't need them. And they were only created to serve us, to serve people. In fact, they were created initially as a sort of a status symbol. There was a time where only the aristocrats had foxhounds and hunting dogs, and the peasants weren't allowed to have them. So it was sort of a status symbol. But even breeds now, they're not really used for the things that we're using them for. When's the last time you saw a poodle retrieving during hunting, or a Great Dane hunting boar or something like that. So they're really being bred at this point to serve our own pleasure and our own enjoyment, because we want to have something that we like the look of, or we think we know the temperament of. But the truth is, we don't even know that. And while there are millions and millions and millions of dogs every year in shelters or in rescues that are dying, being killed, or being neglected, why are we continuing to produce more just to satisfy our own desires? I don't think that is the way we need to do that. If we really love dogs, we should love them as dogs and not just what they can do for us. So to me, very exploitation there.
No, very, very important point of view. Thank you, Corey. We're also looking at this article here from your website. I love all dogs, but pure breeds at Westminster break my heart. Please check out his website, pathoffriendship.com. Here is an ad for 1619, the incredibly important project that the New York Times published to recognize the 400th anniversary of the beginning of American slavery. And just even look how they've laid it out. You know, they've laid it out like this. And we did a wonderful conversation around this. And, oh, look at this, how it goes from 1619 to 2019 when the project was published. Very nice use of those 2 pages. Can Alabamians see past Trump's disdain for Sessions? And I guess Sessions, is he running again for office? Or I don't know what he's doing. Let's see. Yang is running. We don't get too political in these shows if you don't want to be. So if you have an opinion on the current state of politics, or if you have a candidate, you're welcome to mention him or her. But otherwise, we can move on. Corey.
I'm not that political, although I do know that I think politics have come to sort of, go team go. And I think it's missing the point. Politics really should be to help improve the lives of people, and rather than being more my team versus your team. So I try to kind of stay out of sort of team sports, especially when it comes to politics, because I think in the end, everybody suffers.
I will say one thing about politics is that it's every president has had a dog in the White House, as far as we know, from a certain point, I think, if not every single president. And this is the first president that doesn't have a dog in the White House. Am I correct in that? Do you know?
Yeah, I want to actually address that. I think there's a lot that I like and a lot I don't like about various presidents and their dogs. But if someone doesn't have the time I have respect for somebody who says, you know what, I don't have the time for a dog to really give them, so I don't want to just have it just to show. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's better rather than just have a dog as sort of a trophy or something to say, look what I have. I have a dog, therefore I'm a good person. It doesn't really serve the dog any. Again, it's self-serving. So if you don't have a dog,
I think that's fair, Corey. I would have disagreed, but the way you say it, I think that's fair. This president certainly doesn't have the time, interest, barely in his own children. So I think raising a dog would. So I will give you that. Let's move on. We have several questions and comments coming in. I'd love Neil to just put some of those questions back on the screen. We've been having such a good conversation. We haven't had a chance to get to those questions. This is the painting at the Met that that's on the front page of the New York Times. The story about this painting, and but a violent painting might hide a painful past. So I look forward to reading that story. If anyone's read it and has opinion, let us know. Yeah, Beth's excellent question. Beth Wilson-Linden, how did you introduce Bodhi to your existing canine family? My wife isn't watching, so I just want to say that if she's always hinting at getting a second dog. We don't have the time now, but our twins are probably heading for college in 600 days. No one's counting. Wow. And so if she insists we get a second dog, I am curious how that works with an existing canine family.
It depends on the dog. I had actually my dog Bhakti meet Bodhi away from the home for the first time, just to see, not to see if they would get along, because these sort of snapshot meetings or snapshot evaluations don't really give you a real picture. But what it can do is it can kind of bring up some really red flags if they're there. So I didn't see any of that. So I just brought Bodhi home and I just let him be. It's really important for a dog coming into a new place to just decompress and to give them as much space and as much support and freedom as possible. So don't get into too much of, here are the rules, you must follow them. They're stressed out enough. You're stressed out bringing your dog home and you know what's going on. Imagine from their perspective, all of a sudden they're plucked out of where they were and put in someplace new. They need time to find what's safe. So make sure that they just know where they eat and where they can kind of go by to be themselves, and give them room and space to grow. That's the most important part of introducing a dog.
Thank you. That's very, very important. Corena Kelly says, she's at a house with multiple Anatolians for 30 years, retired from showing now. Can you recommend a smaller pet retirement breed that isn't clingy?
Go to your shelter, go look at some rescues, spend some time with some of the dogs there and get an inner feel for them.
But they're also cute at that moment. Come on, you'll come away with 20 dogs if you. Oh, here's our dog. Tara's coming. Here's Tara.
Hi, Tara.
Tara, look, it's your friend Corey.
Oh, she looks nice in her sweater.
Tara. Yeah, she does. By the way, does she need a sweater? What's up with these sweaters?
I put a sweater on my little dog. In fact, when I do a lot of hiking with my dogs all the time, and I always put coats on them when it's cold.
So you do put clothes on the dog when you're going hiking. Okay. Any just back here's Tara's Instagram. Not Tara. Those of you who are on Instagram, we hope you'll follow her. This is the handle is _Tara, and you'll see all kinds of photographs of her and her family, and she is a wonderful dog that's changed our lives. So you were just saying, so you don't. How do you know? You're saying you'll have an inner feel by going to the shelter, but you could come away with 20 dogs if you're not careful.
Well, sure, you could, but you have to have a little self-control and know what you can handle and what you can't handle. But to say, here's a specific breed, I think we're trying to reduce our anxiety of the unknown too much when we do that. I really think part of the magic of having sharing our lives with a dog is seeing how they grow, seeing how they turn out. We need to take a step back from trying to control everything from how they look to how they act to just enjoying our relationship with them. And it's like if I want to say, what, I want a friend. And if I grab somebody off the street and I say, I like the way you look, but listen, you don't have a voice. I'm going to tell you everything to do. How am I being a friend to that person? The best way, obviously, is to spend time and to find a person that you have a lot in common with and that you enjoy each other's company. Now, we don't normally get that opportunity with dogs because we don't go on a dating process. Although I used to do something at one of the shelters that I worked with, I'll tell you in a minute. But so what we do is we sort of create these breeds to help us decide, okay, well, this is what it's going to look like and how it's going to act. But it doesn't always work out that way. And that's why there are millions and millions of dogs in shelters. Most of those dogs are in shelters because they didn't turn out the way people wanted them to. And so they abandoned them. So part of it is having this sort of unconditional just acceptance. And if you really love dogs, you find things that you love about them. You look at them at who they are. All my dogs are very different. And we don't agree on everything, but that's part of having a great relationship, is finding the balance and finding how we complement each other and not always being in control of every aspect of them. So yeah, go take a chance and step back from control and really enjoy the experience of living with a dog.
Thank you. Here's an obit. Greta Beer, who battled banks for assets stolen in Holocaust, dies at 98. Her work helped banks force in Switzerland to pay more than $1 billion in compensation to Holocaust victims and their heirs over lost assets. She was herself given $100,000 as she tried to find her father's Swiss bank account. a woman who made a big difference. Orson Bean dies, 91, quirky actor on stage, movies, and television. He was struck by a car while crossing the street at 91. How sad. It just shows you that, you never know when something's going to happen. And you make it all the way to 91 and then you get hit by a car. So sad. Leading a nomadic life as an aging hippie and a self-described house husband. And Stanley Cohen, 97, Nobel winner, who made a breakthrough on cell growth. He was at the Vanderbilt University in Nashville. I remember spending my nights collecting over 5,000 worms on campus. There's an animal connection there. 5,000 worms on campus. I don't want my son to read that or hear that because he may think there are lots of worms on the Vanderbilt campus if he has any interest in going there, and my daughter too. All right, let's move on. Are you you get to pick which section we go to next. We have Sunday Styles, Metropolitan, Travel, Real Estate, Sunday Review, Business, the magazine. Where would you like to go? Oscars.
Let's see.
Oh, we have a question from LinkedIn. Donato asks, is there evidence that rescues love their owners more than pure breeds?
I don't think that's a good question. I don't think there's evidence. And honestly, I don't think that they love more. And I don't think that people love their rescues or purebreds more than the mixed breeds. I think it's the same. My whole thing on purebreds is we shouldn't keep producing them as long as there are so many out there that are don't have homes. So I don't think it's a matter of rescues are better than pure breeds or pure breeds are better than rescues. They're all the same. We just need to take care of what we have before we make more.
Got it. Any section you want me to go to?
Well, I'm not real up on this, but arts and leisure is always a favorite. Used to be always a favorite section of mine.
All right, so let's go there. Hollywood identity crisis reflected in Oscar's mirror. 5 years after Oscar So White, 5 industry figures assess the gains and setbacks. So that'll be a good thing to look at. Who's your favorite actor, favorite movie? I know not for this season because you haven't seen the seasons, but just talk a little bit about movies in your life.
So my favorite movie, I have a couple of favorites, but my favorite movie, and this is going way back, is Harold and Maude with Ruth Gordon and Bud Cort. I don't know if do you know that movie?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it. It's one of those classics that I think it won awards, but I haven't seen it.
I believe it did. It's sort of a comedy. It's a very profound movie in a lot of ways. It's wonderful. It has great, if you remember old Cat Stevens music, it had that. It's just a wonderful story about life and two different sort of views on life. One a very dark and pessimistic, and one a very embracing life what it is and the twists and turns. Plus, Ruth Gordon is fantastic. She was also Rosemary's Baby. If you remember that, she was in Rosemary's Baby. She was a wonderful actress. So that's probably my go-to movie as my #1 all-time favorite.
Wow! All right. By the way, one of my favorite all-time movies is The Jungle Book, the original cartoon.
Yeah,
I really loved, and I thought
I love that movie. The music on that movie was so good.
The music, the music and the story was incredible.
Yes.
I didn't see the current version, all these remakes where they're doing live action of classic movies. I'm not sure why they're doing it, but they are. Let's see. This is Oscar So White held up an unflattering mirror. Hollywood still can't look away. So they've interviewed a bunch of people, including the president of the Academy, Cheryl Boone Isaacs, April Rain, who's the creator of the hashtag Oscar So White, and a whole bunch of people, including Spike Lee, Barry Jenkins, director of Moonlight, Ava DuVernay, director of Selma, all kinds of folks here. What's really interesting is that even after 5 years later, there's still so many problems with diversity at the movies. Parasite, which is the #1 movie in everybody's recommendation list to me, and I've not seen it yet, South Korean film, nominated for 6 Oscars, but not a single acting Oscar. As someone said, do they think the movie acted itself? Like, No credit to those stars. By the way, April Rain was a guest and headliner at Social Media Weekend, my flagship event, which takes place on March 21st. It's a Saturday at Pace University. And like the conversation with April, we'll have folks who have done such incredible work covering the world, are Pulitzer Prize winners. And here's some information about Social Media Weekend. So nice of Neil to pull this together. Social Media Weekend, 30 world-class speakers. You have a chance to talk to social media doctors to help you. We also take free headshots. So anyone who's watching who can get to New York, please do join us. Our partners at Pace University are hosting us in their lovely new space and in downtown New York. Tickets are just $149 early bird. They go up in a couple of weeks. If you can't afford it, please let me know. Write to me. I will see if we can arrange volunteer opportunities because we want everyone to benefit from this. It also makes a great Valentine's Day gift for someone in your life. $149. They get to use and learn a whole bunch of new technologies. And student tickets are just $99. So please do check us out. Social Media Weekend. The link is on the screen. Look at previous guests, include Craig Newmark and April Rain and others. So anybody who can make it, please do. We would love to see you there. The former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Helen Clark, Ali Velshi, for now on MSNBC, they were all there. We also need sponsors. So if anyone has a few bucks they can throw our way so that we can get more people to attend and benefit from this, please let us know. Thank you. It's Social Media Weekend. The hashtag is SMWKND. It's pinned to the top of my Twitter feed. And please do let people know. Even if you can't make it, we'll have people from around the country and would love to see you there. Thanks very much. There's also a Twitter handle at SMWKND, but again, pinned to the top of my @Sree feed. Oscars tell a story of their own. This year's Best Picture nominees, mostly about white men, feels as though it's been pulled from a time capsule, writes our critic. Wesley Morris is an incredible writer. Look how many things here are from a different era, a different time. The assembly of these movies feels like a body's allergic reaction to its own efforts at rehabilitation. And there's a gala honoring Spike Lee, which looks fascinating. Spike Lee was on campus at Stony Brook University. I couldn't make it there to see him, but it was obviously wonderful to have him there. All right, let's move on. Let's go to travel. What's the favorite places you have been in the U.S. or elsewhere?
I drove cross country twice. We went out west to the Grand Canyon. We went hiking in Utah, the Monument Valley, which was phenomenal. Wyoming, went hiking in Wyoming. South Dakota. It was just driving cross country. Did it twice with the dogs, packed the dogs up in the car and took the trip. And it was such a wonderful experience. I've always loved, my favorite book growing up was always John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, which is really his story about how he took his dog, Charlie, standard poodle, and drove cross country. And so that was always kind of in my head. I always wanted to do that. And so a few years ago, my wife and I and our 3 dogs, and we decided we're going to do it. And we did 2 years in a row. So the Arizona, Colorado, Utah, it was just wonderful, wonderful country out there, and beautiful. And I can't get that red sand out of my head from hiking in out west. So it was a wonderful place. And we look forward to going back.
Thank you, Corey. I'm stepping in for just a moment. Want to acknowledge Pradnya's offer to help sponsor both the read-along and the social media weekend. Pradnya, I'll be sending you the New York Times read-along request first. So I'm hoping that'll get in front of the queue. But of course, we want support for the social media weekend as well. I see Sree is back on camera. I'm going to make sure that we're good technically. Sree, everything good on your end?
Hi, folks. Hi, thanks, Neil. I'm not sure what happened, but great to be back. And thanks for stepping in. For those who don't understand how this works, Neil, just explain what's going on right now. We have Corey in Pennsylvania, me in New York, you're outside DC. Just explain this technology a little bit.
Absolutely. And I know it seems to be having a little bit of an issue with your feed, but we're using an app called StreamYard to produce the show. And I'm more than happy to explain to people and talk to people about it. Afterward, I'm just looking for
Social Media Weekend, right? You're going to be talking about it.
And I'll be presenting at Social Media Weekend on live streaming as well. We had been using Facebook Live primarily for, you've been using Facebook Live for a number of years, 4 years, going into our 5th year now. And I've been working with you for about 2 years. And in November, Facebook suddenly dropped the ability to bring on remote guests. So Corey, we would have brought you on as a remote guest through your Facebook account. But Facebook stopped supporting that. So very quickly, and I'm not sure what the elephant is in the room. Is that an elephant? A camel? But
it's an elephant.
It's an elephant. But we switched very quickly to using this app called StreamYard, and what this allows us to do, in addition to bringing on remote guests, we have some great features. We can have some graphics on the screen, as you see the banner at the very top. I also have a logo in the top right corner I can show, specific to each guest. We can have multiple people on the screen. We're showing in myself and Corey right now. We had Sree for a moment. You can actually show up to 6 people on the screen and have up to 10 accounts waiting in the background. In addition to the multiple views, as you've been seeing, we're highlighting various comments on the screen as we go. These are all comments coming in from Facebook right now. Unfortunately, StreamYard and LinkedIn don't play together very well, so we can't get the feed from LinkedIn. So we manually have to bring in the comments from LinkedIn. And I do want to acknowledge that Neil Genslinger, a former guest on the New York Times Read Along from several years ago, and a columnist, a writer for the New York Times, noticed that we had name-checked Carla earlier. Neil, I just name-checked you on the screen, so I guess your life is now complete as well. As you saw, we were able to show the slides from Social Media Weekend, articles from the New York Times online. We can also show videos with StreamYard. So I think it's a great app. We've been able to do a lot of interesting things with it. And it also makes it easier when we have some technical difficulties. As you saw earlier, what I noticed is that Shree's screen went blank for just a moment. So I was able to step in and remove him from the screen and put him right back up when he came in. So if you are interested in Social Media Weekend, I hope you have a chance to come. It's a great conference, and as Sree mentioned, I'll be hosting a session on live streaming. I know that Steve Taylor will be there, and other regulars, Stefan Kaplan mentioned earlier, Pradnya as well, and it should be a great event. Sree, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Neil. So let me ask a question of Corey. Across the country twice with dogs. What is the relationship of cars and dogs? And
that's a good question. Some dogs are they just don't like the cars. I had a dog once when I lived in Vermont. I had a dog. His name was Squeeze, which is why you should never let your 2-year-old name your dog. But he, no matter what we did, he just did not like the car. But that's sort of the exception rather than the rule. Most dogs can learn to love being in the car. I definitely recommend seatbelting them in. There are lots of things on the market, harnesses and belts and stuff. You do want to seatbelt your dog in your car when you drive, because if you do stop short or if something worse happens, they are a projectile. Not only can they hurt you, they can obviously hurt themselves. So my dogs are always buckled in the back seat in the car. And it says never let, yeah, Squeeze. Dog's name was Squeeze.
All right. I'm having a little trouble hearing. I hope you guys can hear me. Corey, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Thumbs up.
All right. We're just looking at who benefits from tourism in Hawaii, riffing on hometowns' intoxicating energy in Oakland, California. We love the New York Times travel section, and the great Amy Vershup, the editor of the travel section, invited us to her home in January. Neil got to go and be with her and Seb Modak as they talked about the travel 52 places to go edition of the New York Times. Great highlight of the New York Times read along. We also had the previous editor, my former student Monica Drake, who is now assistant managing editor of the paper. She came 3 times on the show and really helped get us on our way. Here's 36 hours in Curacao and where to travel in 2020. They're having tours to Egypt, the legacy of the 19th Amendment, Ethiopia and its religions, and the Salzburg Festival and the opera extravaganza. With everything going on with Corona, you wonder how it's all going to shake out in the next few months. We hope it's not a pandemic. We hope it goes away. Axios newsletter said most economists predict it'll be over by the summer. I hope it's not too optimistic. I hope that it is in fact true, that's the situation. Corey, one of the things that a comment came from Diana, who was saying that many people are abandoning their dogs because of fears of the virus. There's also talk of that the virus had some kind of human animal transmission is one of the theories. So can you talk a little bit? I don't know if you know anything about any of this part, but if you have any reflections on what's going on, we'd love to hear it. And Neil, if I can't hear him, then we're going to have you step in again. So it may be a problem on my end, but sounds like you all can hear him.
So it is a lot of people, what's happening, especially if they get quarantined, their dogs are home. They can't get to them. It's quite a tragedy that's going on out there, and it's a human tragedy, but it's also an animal tragedy as well. I don't know enough about the human to animal transmission. I think it might have been started with some sort of exotic anteater or something that was there. I don't know if it transmits through dogs, but I hope that it's not going to be. If it's not true, I hope the dogs aren't going to be scapegoated, as they are a lot of times. And I actually do hope that it's over. My son was planning a trip to China in July. His girlfriend is from China. In fact, she has her grandmother is in Wuhan, and they haven't heard anything really from her in a while. So I really hope that this thing gets, as everybody else does, I hope it gets under control and it gets taken care of for everybody's sake.
A couple more things. If the audio continues, Neil, and finish up the show, but otherwise I'm just going to show them a couple of things here, and you can let me know if my audio is a problem. Please do step in. A Continent Remade, Reflections on the Legacy of Independence. And this is all about Africa, and a beautiful photo spread here of Africa and looking back at the decolonization back in the day. So this is so Neil says you can hear me, so that's good. Look at this photo of Queen Elizabeth with Kwame Nkrumah, the president of Ghana, dancing in 1961. And this is in Cameroon. So articles from all over. Benin, date unknown, 1957, 1958. The leaders of Ghana. So this is look how big the section is. It just goes on and on. We should ask, one of the things we learned from our friend Tom Jolly, the print editor of the New York Times, who also invited us to his home, is that they try to do as many of these special sections as possible to give people who do subscribe to the print edition something special. This may be online as well, but giving them something tangible and special like this, a keepsake like this, is really cool and awesome. So do check that out. I wanted to now just go to the New York Times Magazine and look at this cover. It's IOU with Donald Trump's signature, the inside story of Donald Trump and Deutsche Bank. We're going to come to the moment where I will ask Corey one of the ethics questions in here. I won't be able to hear him because I'm having trouble at my end, but you'll all hear his answer to. It is not a quiz. There's no right or wrong answer. So please don't worry about it, Corey. Let's keep going here. Story is about Junkyard. The comedian Conor O'Malley indicts the greed that built Manhattan's Hudson Yards. So critic of Hudson Yards here. So they have a wonderfully striking, big architectural element called the vessel that you can climb, 2,000 steps. Unfortunately, somebody committed suicide off of it just this past week. Here's Henry Louis Gates, Skip Gates, on the beer summit and Obama's legacy. My whole attitude was channeled through the desire to protect our first Black president. Okay, so now I'm going to read the poem that's here. In fact, it's about a parrot, it says. I will read this out loud, and I always believe that poems should be read by the poet or by experts, or certainly should not be read cold like I'm about to do. And it says, Parrot by Nick Flynn. Stranger, uninvited, you came up to us on the sidewalk, my daughter's hand in mine. You looked at her and coo, it goes so fast. What, stranger, is this unnamed it this day? Her life, our happiness? Stranger, maybe you missed it, but just now my daughter and I hurled rocks into the emptiness, and we created more emptiness. This is about a moment on a sidewalk becomes a koan, a fragment bearing a mysterious pronoun. Who needs it more, the person who tells it or the person? Is it a gift of or intrusion? Repeating in memory the way a parrot's cackled mantra hovers. Random comments on subways and waiting rooms connect us. And what about this emptiness? Is it empty or full? What about parrots and other sorts of pets? We had Mark tell us he has a gecko. What are your thoughts on those kinds of pets, which to me are so much easier than the pets that we've been talking about, mostly cats and dogs?
Well, if they're cared for well, it's fine. I have an issue with taking things from the wild, from their natural habitats, and bringing them into our homes. If they were born and bred in captivity, then it's okay. I prefer things in their natural state mostly, but I do know that most people will really care for the creatures that they've been entrusted with. But it's more, to me, it's more beautiful to see a bird in its natural being a bird, not in a cage, or a creature that's not confined. That's pretty much. With that said, I mean, I grew up with just like everybody else, and I had my share of turtles and lizards and all kinds of things that I would bring home constantly, much to the dismay of my mother, who wasn't really fond of most of these things. But nowadays, I prefer to just kind of see them as they are.
All right. This is Kwame Anthony Appiah, the ethicist, and his question is, the question that came to him is, I've inherited a fatal disease. Can I tell my sister's children about their risk? I've been struck by a fatal disease inherited from my father. I have children who know they have a 50-50 chance of inheriting the disease from me. I have several siblings. One is children of her own. She has so far refused to be tested on the off chance she too has the gene. This means that our children don't know anything about the cause of my disease. There are interventions that could protect any future grandchildren, but the children don't know they are in danger of passing the disease along. I've been tempted to tell my sister's children myself, but I know this would result in a major breach in our relationship, a real loss to me. What is my ethical responsibility here? Corey, I'm going to ask you that question. Again, there are no right or wrong answers. You haven't obviously studied this or anything, but if you have a thought on it, you're welcome to share it.
Hark back to my days in school, taking philosophy and ethics. I would continue to make my case, as far as if I were them, I would to make my case how important it is to get that information out, because the more information that is there, the more you can prepare for it and help, maybe not solve the problem, but at least you're more prepared for it. So I would continue to make the case that it's important to get all that out there and to have that be known about them. I think it's critically important. Keeping someone in the dark about these things doesn't really serve any purpose.
All right, I see Bodhi stirring in the back there.
Yeah.
How long should dogs sleep, by the way? Or again, it varies, I know, but what is your answer to that question of how much should they sleep? Are they sleeping too much? Are they active enough, not active enough?
I think they should sleep as much as they want to. But the nice thing is they're always ready to go. So as long as you have a nice balance of getting them out and active and moving around and engaging with them in activities, not just sending them out by themselves, let them sleep. Why not? I would. If I could sleep, I would probably sleep a lot more than I do now. So let them enjoy.
Paula says maybe Bodhi likes ethical questions. So that was funny.
Yes,
yeah,
he does.
That's pretty good. Paula says, again, if you're new here, there's the New York Times read along, and we're glad you joined us. We read the paper, but also discuss other issues of the day, and that's what's happening now. This is Corey Cohen, animal behavioralist, the dog hugger. And that reminds me, there's a debate, Corey, isn't there, about whether dogs like being hugged and whether their stress level goes up when you hug them. I want to hug my dog all the time, but sometimes I worry about this.
First of all, it's not a black and white answer. I wouldn't run up to a strange dog and start hugging it. I mean, that's not a good idea. If you have rapport with your dog, you can hug them. Every dog is going to be different when you do that. You can't say, they don't come out of factories. You can't say all dogs don't like being hugged, or you can't say all dogs do like being hugged. When you have to respect them. So you wouldn't run up to a stranger and hug them. So you have to respect your dog, know what they like. Some dogs absolutely love it. Bodhi didn't like being touched even when I first got him, and now he asks for it all the time. My other dog, Bhakti, she at times likes it, at times doesn't. So there's no black and white. You have to have sort of a conversation with your dog and realize, all right, do you want this? Do you not want this? So there's no black and white answer. I think that the study that was done, at least the initial study that I heard of that was done, was based on photographs and seeing dogs being stressed out. And yeah, probably some of them were stressed out when they were being hugged. But I think it's a very individual, one-on-one type of answer to that. Some dogs like it, some dogs don't.
Please do connect with Corey. He's at pathoffriendship.com, and he's a great expert, as you can see. And if you're in the New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, there's a chance, and you have a chance to work with him, please do. He's awesome, and you can find him on pathoffriendship.com. He's also on Twitter, on Instagram and Facebook. Please do connect. And Carla says, I remember when Bodhi was so fearful, he wouldn't even interact with me at all. Now he comes up right up to me. So it shows you that Corey knows what he's doing. And she says, I should ask you about your dog, Cosmo. Yeah,
Cosmo was a dog that I had before I had these guys. In fact, no, I have a little shrine to him. He was a German Shepherd puppy that I had found. And he really sort of changed or reintroduced me to the way I feel now with dogs. When I got him, I spent a lot of time working with him for competition and he was this magnificent German Shepherd with a pedigree that would rival any dog's pedigree from German lines and working dogs. And the transformation came when he got sick and was pretty much is touch and go before an operation. And that's when I realized that, he wasn't just my dog. He was actually my friend. And it kind of changed our relationship. And it changed my relationship and how I interact with my dogs now. And it really changed my whole outlook on the overall idea of being equal friendship with our dogs rather than owner and pet. It's really quite a difference in the connection level that we have, in the security levels that we have with each other. It helps behaviorally, emotionally, definitely relationally. So Cosmo was sort of the catalyst with that. And I miss him. It's been 4 years, and I still miss him constantly.
Well, thank you for the story. Interesting article about framing. And look at the name of this person. My daughter's name is Durga, which is her first name. Chu, what an unusual animals and all of that. But Chu and Bose is also an Indian name. So Durga, Chu, Bose, and there's a dog right there. There's a dog in this photo. And talk about framing. Framing is some of paintings. We do a lot of framing of paintings and things in our house. And we find that in New York, framing is often more expensive than the art itself. Oh, look at this picture of Corey, photo taken by Tom Franklin, the wonderful photographer who took the famous at Ground Zero of those firemen raising that flag. Came from the same photographer who's now taken this picture, which is just awesome to see. But this is all about how to do framing. And my daughter Durga's off, so she's just going to wave goodbye. Bye. She's going to wave bye. And here we let's go in. How to dress for a job interview. We have about 5-7 minutes left. We'll just quickly go through this. Jenny Offel is the master of novels told in sly, burnished fragments. I'm sorry, I don't know her. Offel with her daughter in 2006. The money behind Trump's money. Deutsche Bank lent billions to Donald Trump, often against the advice of its own executives. Now the bank's files may hold the key to many of the mysteries surrounding the president and tell the story of how the financial industry lost itself. Trump International Hotel, $170 million loan. The Doral, $120 million. Look at all these loans that he got. A man bankrupted 3 times or 6 times or something like that. I want to read the story, but it is also so disappointing because we know how people can find it hard to get $1,000 loan because of bad credit. And here's somebody who has been bankrupt multiple times. Can get billions of dollars in loans. Just absolutely terrible, terrible stuff. The only refuge I have is to do more work. Dee Rees and the Art of Surviving as a Black Female Hollywood Director by Jenna Wortham. This is on the set of The Last Thing He Wanted in 2018. Dee Rees, and the movie premiered at Sundance in January. And let's see, very expensive places to live. And a crossword puzzle that's all in emojis, or a lot of it is in emojis. He hopes this puzzle evokes a lot of good memories for movie lovers. Brian Coleman made this. Let me ask you, Corey, are you a puzzle person? Are you a crossword puzzler? Any of those things?
Not anymore. Years ago, I would spend hours doing it, but not anymore. My wife used to love crossword puzzles, and she was always really good at them. She would get them all. So I was always jealous of that. But lately, not so much.
All right, folks. We only have a few minutes left, and unfortunately, I'm not able to hear Corey, so I'm going to actually just hand this over to Neil in just a second. I'm just going to turn the camera over, say goodbye, so that
I'm going to wait for Sree to turn the camera around so he can say goodbye.
Neil, lead us to the last. Hand you over to him. Monday morning.
Absolutely, Sree, and
thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and to you. Bye.
Absolutely, thank you, Sree. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. for the show. We do have one last question for you, Corey, that I'm going to put back on the screen. Beth Wilson, whoops, sorry, it moved around too quickly. Beth Wilson Leiden, are all dogs able to be rehabilitated, or have you come across any that could not overcome their issues?
That's an interesting question. And actually, it goes back to what Sree was talking about in a different context about framing. It depends on how you're framing the relationship. If we're framing it where we have to be in control of everything and the dog is something that we must control, then no, we can't overcome every one of those issues. But if we frame it that we're friends and we can sort of accept each other and work out differences together and resolve conflicts as partners and friends, then yes, things can always be worked out for both of you. Great.
Thank you so much, Corey. Really appreciate that. And I want to, while we're thanking people, I want to thank Sree again, not only for the community that he's built up over the last 4 years, and now entering our 5th year with the New York Times Read Along. But again, I say this every time I get a chance to guest host. Every time he, asks me to take over in the middle of a show when I'm not expecting it. It's an incredible amount of trust and faith that he's placed in me, in Steve, and Paula to produce this show, to represent him. And it's always very humbling and an extreme privilege to do that. I want to let people know about next week's guest, because I think this is going to be really great as well. We have Leslie Wayne is going to be our guest next week. She is a former journalist for the New York Times. She's going to be on the Upper West Side. So Sree will be interviewing her. And as you can see, we have Shree's new headshot that we can promote, which is always fun. So a little bit about Leslie that I'm going to share real quickly as we close out today's show. So as I was mentioning, Leslie is at Columbia Journalism School now as she was a former business reporter for the New York Times, and she had produced more than 1,500 bylines and is still a contributor there as well. And I know that she's also involved with the Times Journeys, the travel projects they do, where they bring reporters and editors on travel around the world. So she will be our guest next week. We're certainly looking forward to having her, and I certainly encourage you to join in next week, February 16th, Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We are live every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Facebook and LinkedIn, often with a guest, as we've mentioned more than a few times. And again, Corey, I want to thank you for joining us. This was a great show. I know that a lot of people really enjoyed the conversation and got a lot out of it. A lot of pet lovers. Here's Carla talking about Leslie Wayne. She had worked with her. Jonathan saying that today's show was fun and interesting. And of course, Paula saying thank you as well. Any last thoughts, Corey, before we sign off?
No, this is wonderful. Thank you very much for having me. And let's everybody give our dogs a kiss. Really, they add an awful lot to our lives, and they're a big part of what makes us human. So thank you very much. Thanks, Sree. Thank you for having me on in this great it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this a lot.
Great. And thank you to Carla Baranakis as well, a longtime friend of yours and a huge supporter of the Read Along. She's helped bring a number of guests to our table and helped facilitated great conversations, not just today's conversation with you, but when we went to Tom Jolly's house, the print editor of the New York Times, last summer. She helped bring Susan Brownmiller to the show, and has several guests coming up that she's helping us with as well. So Carla, a big thank you to you, and all of the work that you're doing and the support you have for the New York Times Read Along.
And thank you, Carl. And Carl and I are working on a book together as well on human-dog relationships.
Oh, wow.
Get that out. Yes.
That should be interesting. We definitely will want to promote that once it comes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So with that, we'll end this week's episode of the New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the executive producer and guest host. And we have a great production team. Steve Taylor has been manning LinkedIn. Paula Kiger has been on Facebook. And we'll just share their social media handles as well. And of course, our host is Sree Srinivasan. Remember to join Shree's advanced social media group at Sree Advanced. And we mentioned the social media weekend as well. You can also follow Sree on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to keep up with all of the work that he's doing. And I'll do a final shout out again to our sponsor, Bombay Shirt Company. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the comments and the questions. And we will see you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.